the last few days, there was a lot of discussion and reporting around teams being really interested in acquiring one of either Derrick White and Jaylen Brown. Where do those two guys kind of fall into the vision of this team?
Those two guys are really, really great NBA players, and there hasn't been anything close to serious about trading them. And so I'm not sure where all this reporting came from, but those guys are key parts of our team, and we're lucky to have them here.
Mike Zarren pouring cold water that the Celtics were close to trading Jaylen Brown or Derrick White, and that's where we're going to begin our deep dive right now. Tom Giles, Hardy, Phil, what's up, fellas? How we doing?
Good.
Fantastic. Okay, so obviously Mike Zarren talking after the second round of the NBA draft last night. Hardy, your thoughts on those comments right there, and do you actually believe that the Celtics were never anywhere close to trading Derrick White or Jaylen Brown?
Okay, so actively looking for a trade, no. But did they throw it out there at some point? Like sometimes you're looking for a new dishwasher, right? You look up one dishwasher, and the next thing you know, you got all these emails about dishwashers.
Yep.
You open the emails, some of them you open, some of them you don't. So the same thing is happening right now with the Celtics. I have to believe, even if people are just suffering under the misinterpretation that Jaylen Brown or anyone else from the Celtics is available to them right now, you know they're making calls, and you pick up the phone. It doesn't mean you're actively shopping, but to think that there's no way that anybody on any team would ever be available for any trade, there's a handful of players maybe on, in each city, not even on each team. But I have to say, as much as I think it would be a mistake to trade Jaylen Brown, I don't think he's untouchable, and they would have to at least listen to what people have to say. Is that the same thing as like actively trying to trade him? No. Are you having the conversation? You have to.
I can't wait to get spammed for new dishwashers on social media now, since your phone's always listening.
All of our phones are always listening, Giles. I think it is important to say that it would be irresponsible for them not to listen, for them not to occasionally open those emails, as Hardy points out, because you don't know what might be out there, especially given what we've seen in terms of some of the prices paid for some players who've already been dealt this offseason. If the Celtics can get a Desmond Bane-ish type of package for Derrick White, should they not consider that, Giles? I mean, this is a team that we know has just barely snuck out of the second apron. But as soon as they start to sign a player or Luke Cornett, Al Horford, you want these guys to come back? Bang! You're right back under, or over, excuse me, the second apron. Under, over, however you want to term it, you're in trouble. So they need to make more cuts. There are going to be more cuts coming. It's just a question of, to me, how much do you want to cut? Are you just looking to be under that second apron? Do you want to be completely under the tax altogether and put a halt to these repeater penalties that can happen across the NBA? Like, those are the significant questions to me. And I think just because the draft is over now, those questions haven't necessarily evaporated.
Repeater penalties, recidivist, repeat offender.
You also have to gauge the market, don't you? So even if you're just receiving calls and people are offering packages, whatever it is for your best players, you have to gauge the market because you don't know what position you're going to be in next year or the following year. So I think that, it behooves you to at least listen to all that.
Yeah. Who's to say that, Jaylen Brown might become disgruntled at some point? Don't you want to have an idea of what the marketplace is for him?
Do you think that he would, hear his name come up, in trade chatter, or Shams given that report and say, what is this? Like, what do I got to do to keep my name out of any trade rumors for one offseason?
Yeah, right. You would think that he would be used to it by now. To me, it just seems so ridiculous that you would trade away your finals MVP and conference finals MVP and everything else from just 2 years ago. And if you want to have any kind of a team for next year, to think about trading that guy. So as ridiculous as it might sound, I think Jaylen Brown is also smart enough to know that that's part of the business. And even though it's not necessarily something they would wish for, it's something that business-wise you would be derelict of duty to not at least investigate it. So, no, I don't think he's going to get personally offended at the mere mention of his name and the fact that they might be picking up the phone.
Yeah, I would hope not, right? I mean, better players than Jaylen Brown have been traded before. They will be traded in the future, and it is just part of the business, Giles. And listen, I don't think he'll get dealt. But again, if the right deal is there for them and you have a new ownership group that might be interested in especially looking at a season coming up that could be hovering closer to 500 than anybody likes, where they might want to get a little bit less expensive in terms of the money that they're dishing out to players.
Okay, well, the other thing, too, that's come out over the last few days, or we've gotten maybe some clarity on, and perhaps the biggest question mark coming out of Brad Stevens' press conference, was the contract status of head coach Joe Mazzulla. Stevens making it sound like Mazzulla got an extension at some point. Here's Stevens on Wednesday night, as well as Michael Hawley last night on that subject.
First of all, I'll keep any of those discussions in-house, but we've got Joe under contract for multiple years right now, and so we certainly want Joe to be around here for a long time.
There may be, as I understand it, a team option.
Okay.
There's a team option. So technically, he's not in his lame duck year. Technically, he's got one more a team option year. So he has got this year, and the Celtics have the ability to exercise an option.
Got it.
My understanding is that they're not going to exercise that option, and that there will be a contract extension for Joe Mazzulla.
Okay.
He's going to get a new deal.
You know, Tim Welsh was also with us the last couple of nights as well. He had some comments on it that Joe Mazzulla probably did want an extension following that championship. I think that part of this is also the Celtics went up for sale basically a week after they won the championship. So when your franchise is up for sale, I could see how it would be more difficult to get an extension done then. But what's your interpretation of everything we've heard over the last couple of days from Michael, from Brad Stevens, from everybody?
It makes sense to me. And, you know, given that the new ownership group hasn't even really been fully approved yet, and it's not all finalized, it doesn't surprise me that something like this, even though relative to some of the other moves being made, we're talking about, you know, relative peanuts when it comes to the dollar figures, Hardy. Despite that, it's the kind of thing that you would want to have all your ducks in a row first when it comes to who the new owners are, before going ahead and putting pen to paper on a new contract for a coach. It doesn't surprise me that they'd like to bring him back. I don't know who else you'd bring in that would be a lot better. He's pretty young. The best player likes him. It seems to me like he should be the guy that you move forward with.
And I think so, too. And I think he's a smart guy, and I think he's a capable guy. And if there are shifts in the NBA, as we're seeing right now with you know, what type of talent you're going to be dealing with and how games are going to be played, I think he's smart enough and good enough to make those shifts. Having said that, he's also only been the head coach of this team when they were already really, really good. If I were the new owner, I would want to see how he reacted and how he dealt with the team that is going to be suffering through some real adversity.
Adversity, you got it. Yeah. Nailed it.
Thank you, sweetie. Adversity next year by having their best player out. How does all that stuff go? All that quirky Joe Mazzulla stuff. How does that play in a locker room when you're not automatically guaranteed 60 wins just by rolling the balls out there? So if I were the new owner, I'd want to see how this plays next year when they're going to be, let's face it, expectations are going to be lower and they're going to struggle a bit more.
But the problem with that is, and Michael Hawley brought up the team option. The problem with that is, though, if his contract becomes a conversation throughout the season, then, you know, there might be certain players on the team that don't want to be a part of that distraction, or even assistant coaches and everything else. I just think in a league where you're paying as much as you are for your entire salaries and everything else, we're talking about $250 million in just tax penalties and everything else, to pay a guy and give him the assurance, if you think he's going to be the guy for the next couple of years, and it sounds like that from Brad Stevens, why wouldn't you just get it done and not have to worry about that one thing going into next year?
The reason why is what Hardy raises, which is you're worried he's not as good as maybe you think he is. And you put him in a situation that's a little bit more difficult. Like, why couldn't this be the scenario, Giles? They go into next season. He doesn't yet have the extension. He does have this team option that is hanging over his head. And they get to midseason, and if they are far worse than they expected to be, and if the team, for instance, isn't playing with the kind of pace that clearly Brad Stevens and my guess is new ownership would like, well, then why would you extend him for years on end? Like, I understand you're putting him in a little bit of a difficult spot because his best player is out and in a boot. But don't you want to see certain things and have those assurances before you lock him up long term?
I just think that you're setting him back, or you're making life more difficult by not having those assurances going into the year. And if you don't like the way next year goes, teams do it all the time. We see teams right now, like the Phoenix Suns have been through like 5 coaches and 5, like teams do it all the time. So if that's really what you're worried about, I mean, it's not like that's going against your salary cap, but I think they're going to lock him up. And let's also get into what we've seen here from a roster standpoint, because with the Holiday and Porzingis trades, Celtics got major relief in 2 ways. So they saved a bunch of money, financial relief, $95 million in future salary, $180 million in luxury tax savings. Then you got the relief from the second apron penalties. So being under the second apron, the Celtics regained full control of their first-round picks, as well as being able to use the mid-level exception. There's the aggregating of contracts, which is, you can take two guys, combine their salaries to trade it for one guy, that kind of thing. Is this more, in your interpretation, Phil, about the financial implications or the basketball implications? I think it's both, which is a cop-out answer. I understand that. But I think if Jason Tatum was healthy, they wouldn't really try to bring back that group, because I think they would look at the rest of the East and feel as though they have a real shot at an NBA championship this coming season. That's not the case anymore. So they're in this weird spot, Hardy, where they are a team that should be good in 2 years. But in the meantime, they're kind of in this rebuilding situation, even though they have some really expensive salaries. So you would like for Brad Stevens to have all these little roster-building tools at his disposal over the course of the next 12 months so that he can build things back up during this quote-unquote gap year, so that by the time Jason Tatum comes back, they're actually ready to contend. They're in a very weird spot, and I do think the basketball penalties are significant for them for this year.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think it's both, and that's not a cop-out.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
No, that's what the truth of the matter is. But had they rolled to another NBA championship and they just steamrolled through everybody in the East and they steamrolled their way to another title, I find it difficult to believe they wouldn't, at the very least, have serious conversations and probably try and bring back, if not every aspect, 90% of what this team is about, and bring it back next year. But since they didn't do that, and since their best player isn't going to be playing for a large chunk, if not all of next year, look at the money and say, what are we going to spend all this money for? Absolutely not. So it's the money.
He's right. I mean, Giles, think about it. Like, are you willing to spend $200+ million more than you will be now that you've traded those two guys, just to finish with the 4th seed and maybe be out in the second round? Like, if you're taking a realistic look at their chances this year, would anybody be comfortable paying that much?
There's also the realistic thing of operating at a loss, where if you're paying so much money based on, if you're going to operate at a loss as a business too. So I can understand that side of it. But I agree with you guys. It's both things.
Yeah, they're business guys. And you look at it, it's like, maybe we paid too much for this team to begin with. If this bubble bursts, we don't want to be laying out $500 million more on a team that's not going to win.
Okay, we're taking a look at some of the issues facing the Celtics in our YouTube series called The Off Season. Wednesday at 4 o'clock, our analysts will break down where the team stands at the start of the NBA league year. Yeah, Kevin O'Connor, Chris Forsberg, Drew Carter for that. You can scan the QR code on the screen. Go to the NBC Sports Boston page on YouTube.